In this video, we'll be discussing how you can introduce conditions and loops in your JavaScript code. So let us get started with iDigitalPreneur. Now, as the definition suggests, a condition is nothing but the conditional execution of code. So whenever you want a certain piece of code to execute on the truthiness and the falseness of a certain condition, that is when you write a condition in your JavaScript code. And similarly, loop is basically running the same code n number of times. So let's say you want a certain piece of code to repeat 10 times and you want to write a better approach for it. We use the concept of loops in that. Now, how are the different ways associated in JavaScript to write conditions and loops? That is what we are going to see in this video. So starting off from the very basic way of writing a condition, which is using an if-else statement. So for example, let us say that we are creating a system in which we want to check the age of the user. And if the age of the user is below 18 years, then we would basically print the message that the user is not eligible to vote. And if the person's age is above or equal to 18 years old, then we'll print the message that this person is actually eligible to vote. So to write this conditionally, what we do is, let's say that we take in the age, and I'm going to say const age is equal to, let's give it a random value of 15. And now I want to write in a condition. So the first way to do it is using the if else statement. So you just type in if, and then inside a pair of brackets, you write a condition or you write an expression which you want to be true. So whenever this condition inside of this bracket is true, then whatever code we write inside of this pair of curly braces, that will get executed. So what is the condition for our printing of message of this person is eligible to vote? That is, the age should be greater than or equal to 18. Now, depending on the different conditions, there are of course different conditional operators that you can use in JavaScript, and I will discuss a couple of them. The first one is triple equals or double equals. We will discuss what the definition of triple equals and double equals are, but mostly in JavaScript you will be using a triple equals, and triple equals is basically used to compare two numbers or compare two variables, right? So whenever you want a comparison between two variables, we use a triple equals. Then we have exclamation mark double equals. This essentially means that the left variable is not equal to the right variable. So whenever you have an expression in which the requirement is that the left variable should not be equal to the right variable, we use the exclamation double equals to sign, which roughly translates to not equal to. Then finally we have greater than. As we already know, this is a mathematical expression. Greater than, less than. Then we have greater than equal to, which essentially means that if the left value is either greater than or equal to the right variable, then we use greater than equal to. Similarly, we have less than equal to. So these are the different comparator operators that you can use in your if-else condition, and not just in if-else conditions, you can use it in anywhere in your JavaScript code. So in my condition, I want that the age should be equal to or greater than 18. So for this case, I will say that the age, which is what I'm comparing the value here, should be greater than equal to 18. And whenever this expression succeeds or this expression is true, I want to print a message. Let's say I print a message called you are eligible to vote. Now, if I execute this code, I will not get the message because the age which I defined here is actually 15 years, and 15 years is not greater than or equal to 18. Now, in order to write a condition which should get executed if this particular expression is false, we have another nesting of block using the else statement. So now inside of my else, I can write you are not eligible to vote. So now essentially I am saying that if the value of 18 is greater than equal to 18, then line number 15, which is you are eligible to vote, should get executed. And for any other case, that means any age which is less than 18, let's say 17, 16, 15, any value less than 18, if that is the value of my variable age, then this particular condition should get executed. And now if I run this, I will see that you are not eligible to vote. If I change the value, let's say I make this 20 and I rerun the code again, I will see that you are eligible to vote is getting printed in my console. Now you can nest together multiple if else statements to kind of create more complicated scenarios, and you can also combine together two expressions. Let's see how you can do it. So let us say you are creating a system in which you want the age of the users to be between 18 to 24 years old, and for any other case you essentially don't want to print something else. So in order to club together two multiple expressions or kind of create a range, we can use the double ampersand sign, and double ampersand sign is a logical operator. There are multiple logical operators inside of our code, and the most commonly used ones are double ampersand, which translates to and there is double pipe, which is this is called a pipe. So double pipe roughly translates to or. So whenever you want both of these conditions to be true, then you use the and operator. And when you want one of the conditions to be true, then you use the or operator. This is how you use the logical operators in JavaScript. So in my case, I want my age both to be greater than equal to 18 as well as less than equal to 24. That is why I'm including the range of 18 to 24. So I will say that the age should be greater than equal to 18 and the value of age should be less than equal to 24. So now I have created a range that whenever the age range is between 18 to 24 years old with 18 and 24 included, then only this particular statement will be true. And for any other case, I have line number 20, which is my else condition. Now for this value, I will run the code and I will see you are eligible to vote. Now, if I give this a value of 25, let's say, and I run this code, now it says you are not eligible to vote because this particular condition is false. So age is greater than equal to 18. This is true, but age is less than equal to 24. This condition is false. And whenever we have two ands, both of the expression needs to be true or both of the expression needs to be false in order to make the entire expression true. And similarly in or, one of the expression needs to be true and the other expression can be false as well. In our case, one of them was true, the other one was false. So that is why my else condition is getting executed. And now I'm saying you are not eligible to vote. Now, if I want to create more subsets like this, I can nest together else if statements. So here I can say else if the value of age is let's say greater than 24 and the value of age is less than equal to 28. Let's say it says that you are eligible to vote but on certain conditions. So let's say I wanted to create another sequence in which if the age of the user is actually between 24 and 28 with not including 24 but including 28, I have created another sub conditions inside of my if else, and now finally I can write an else statement for all the other cases. I will simply copy up this statement and I will say for else you are not eligible to vote. Now, if I run this code, ideally, I will get the message you are not you are eligible to vote, but on a certain condition because my first condition is false. So it falls back to the else statement. Inside of my first else statement, I can see that there is a if statement present here. And now the code actually checks the condition here. So the condition age is greater than 24 is true for this value of age, but and the age of value is less than equal to 28, which is also true for the age 25. So this particular condition is executed and hence we are getting the message you are eligible to vote but on certain conditions. So you can nest infinite number of if else clauses like this, but at one point of time you will feel that it is becoming very cumbersome to maintain, and your code is becoming huge and large, and it becomes really complicated to understand the logic behind it. So there is a better way of kind of switching nested if else statement, and there is yet another way of writing conditions in your code, and that is using the switch case statement. Now what do I mean by switch case statement? Switch case statements are basically you can define multiple cases or scenarios. They can be considered to be as conditions, and whenever one of the condition gets satisfied, whatever code block is associated to that condition, that gets executed. So to create a switch case statement, you write the word switch, and then inside a pair of brackets, you simply define whatever value you want to compare. So let's say I want to compare the value age, and I have defined a age here. So I'm saying age is equal to 25, 26, or 25 rather. Now inside of my switch case statement, I can go ahead and create multiple cases. So let's say I create a case in which the value of case, if the value of age, if the value of age is actually, let's say 18. So I will say that I want to do console.log not eligible. And then I will write in a break statement. Similarly, if let's say the value is 19, I want to say eligible, and I want to insert a break statement. I will come to what the break statements are, and they are an important aspect of the switch case statement. And finally, I have a default case, and it will say console.log. It will say not eligible. So what I have done here is that I have created a switch case statement, and I have created multiple cases. That means I've created multiple values or multiple potential values of age. And for each of these values, I have created a code block, and I have written a break statement. Now, what does this do is that every time this switch case statement gets executed, it will compare the value of age with all of these cases, and whenever one of the cases gets succeeded or one of the cases match, whatever code block is associated to that case will get executed. So with 25, it will first of all enter the first case. The first case, it says that the value of age is actually 18. Now that is simply not the case. So it will move on to the next case. Now it says case 19. Again, the value of age is not 19, it is 25. So it will move on to the next case. Now, after every specified case, we define a default case, which is a way of saying that anytime neither of the cases matched for my switch case statement, it should default to the default case, and default case will always execute when none of the cases match for the value of age. And because that is the situation here, that the value 25 is not getting matched with either 18 or 19. Hence, the default code block of not eligible will get executed, and the break statement is there. Now, if I run this, it says not eligible because my default case is getting executed. If I write 19 here, and if I run this code again, it will say eligible because this particular case is getting executed. Now, why are we inserting the break statement? Now, suppose that I removed the break statement from my from my case 18, and I put in the age value of 18. Now, if I execute this code, I will see that not eligible and eligible both are getting printed. That is because switch case statements have a cascading effect, and we use the break statement to kind of stop the execution once we have found the correct case to be resolved. So in our case, whenever the value of age was 18, case 18 was succeeded. That means this particular case matched, and then line number 19 got executed. But because of the absence of the break statement, the JavaScript execution did not stop at case 18, but it also carried forward to case 19, and it did not even check for case 19. It directly executed case 19. This is kind of like a cascading effect that happens. And just to stop this cascading effect, we write the break statement. Now, let us just assume that we remove the break statement from case 19, right? and I put in the value of 19 here. Now, what do you suppose will happen, right? If I run this code, I should ideally get eligible, and then I should get not eligible, because the cascading effect is happening after this case 19 is getting resolved. But because of the absence of break statement, it is leaking to, you can think of the execution to leak on to the next case. So it's leaking on to the next case which is available, that is the default one. And this console.log is getting printed. If there was no break statement here, it would continue to go forward. So let us see what happens if I don't put in the break statement for my default one. If I run this, it will stop at this because there are no cases any forward. So it is always advisable that whatever case you are creating, always insert a break statement after your execution of the code for that particular case, so that there is no issue of leaking of the execution to the next case. Now, this is a much more refined way of actually writing your if-else statement, but the only disadvantage of using switch case statements over if-else statements is that in switch case statements, you essentially cannot write complicated, complex logics. That means you cannot compare two expressions together, because cases actually require absolute values. You cannot write conditions like this and that will work accordingly, right? So this is the disadvantage of using switch case over normal cases. Now that we have discussed about different ways of writing conditions, that is if-else statements and switch case statements, now let's look at different ways in which you can write loops. And the most conventional way of writing a loop in JavaScript is using the for statement. Now, for statement basically takes in a couple of parameters, a couple of arguments to be precise, and I will discuss what these parameters are. So the first thing that the for statement takes in is a starting counter variable. So it asks for at which count should I start my counting from, because looping is nothing but counting a certain number of times. So let's say I want to print the numbers 1 to 10. So I'm counting from 1 and I'm counting up until 10. For a simple case like counting, I will say that the let I, and you can name your variable whatever you want. So I will say that I have declared a variable I, it needs to start from 1 and it needs to go up until the value of I is less than or equal to 10. And each time the for statement is getting executed, I want to increment the value of I by 1. So I plus plus roughly translates to I is equal to I plus 1. So instead of writing this, we simply write I plus plus. And now inside of my curly braces, which is my for execution block, I can type in console.log of I. And now let's run this code. And I will see that numbers 1 to 10 are automatically printed. So I started from 1, that is my starting initial condition. So this block is basically known as the initial starting block. Then I write an exit condition. This is the condition when my for loop should stop executing. So the condition here is the moment it reaches 10, and the moment the value of I is less than or equal to 10, I need to keep on executing this for block. And every time this for block is getting executed, in the next iteration, I want to increment the value of I. Now you can play around with the values to kind of create much more complicated looping mechanisms. So, and we will also see looping once we start off with arrays and objects. But let's try to spice it up a little bit and see what all different things we can do with the for loop. So let's say I want to start from 1. I want to keep on up until 20. And instead of I plus plus, that means incrementing the value of I by 1, I want to do I into 2. So essentially every time I'm incrementing by a multiple of 2. So let's see what this does. So if I do this, you will see that it is running into a infinite loop, because I into 2 is always true, and it is never like 1 into 2, that is never getting cancelled. So let's just stop this and let's refresh the page once, because if you run into infinite loops, you can run into issues of your computer hanging. So what I'm going to do is I am going to say I is equal to I into 2. So every time I am incrementing the value of I, let's say I want to print it here. Now I will execute this code again. And now it prints me all of the values up until 20, and every time it is multiplying the current value of I with 2. So the first time the value of I is 1, so 1 is getting printed. The next time the value of I becomes 1 into 2, which is 2, and again that is less than equal to 20, so 2 is getting printed. And for the next iteration, the value of I becomes 2 into 2, which is equal to 4. 4 is getting printed, then 8, then 16, and the moment it becomes 16, then the value of I for the next iteration becomes 16 into 2, which is 32, and 32 is of course greater than 20. So that is the point where the for loop actually stops executing and I get all of these numbers printed. So this is a conventional way of writing a for loop. You can again play around with the numbers, write different expressions, write different incrementing counting variables. So you always start off with the starting sequence. You then define the exit condition, and you define by how much magnitude or what factor will the increment value, which is I, that will increment. And inside of this, you can write any piece of logic you want. So this is the conventional way of writing a loop. There is one another way with which we can write loops, and that is not considered to be a very traditional way, and that is using the while statement. Now, while statement works pretty much the same way how if statement works. You basically write an expression which is true. You want something to be executed while this condition inside a pair of brackets is true. So let us say I want to print the same numbers from 1 to 10, but instead of using a for loop, I will be using a while statement here. So I will say while the value of I is actually less than equal to 10. That means this is my exit condition, that up until the point the value of I is less than equal to 10, I want to print console.log of I. Now, if I execute this, right, if I execute this and let's declare a value I is equal to 1, that is my starting condition. So if I execute this code right now, what I will get is 1111 printed infinite number of times, and the loop will keep on continuing. That is what we saw in the for loop example, that this was the condition of infinite loop because I am not specifying the increment of value I. So every time this condition gets checked, the value of I is always 1. So in order to kind of not get into an infinite loop, we simply specify an exit criteria, or we specify by what value of I should it increase or decrease depending on my condition. So here I want that the value of I should be incremented by I plus plus. Now if I run this code, I will get the value from 1 to 10, and it keeps on incrementing the value of I by 1, and it keeps on checking on line number 16 whether the value of I is less than equal to 10 or not. While this is again a conventional way of writing a loop, yet while loops can be highly unpredictable if you have not defined an exit condition like we have in line number 18, and that is why while loops are not considered great for executing loops. So whenever you want to execute a loop, you ideally use a for loop because you have much more greater control over your starting conditions, your increments, and you will not run into issues of infinite infinite rendering sequence. So this was all about writing conditions and loops, and mostly every programming language is a combination of conditions and loops working together, and it is highly imperative that you understand how loops and conditions are written in JavaScript. We will continue our discussion over the basics of JavaScript in the further video. Till then, goodbye.